I never imagined the sound of someone's voice could make my knees weak, especially not his. It started with a laugh, deep and careless, echoing from the kitchen as I stood at the sink with soap suds on my hands and an ache I couldn't name in my chest. He wasn't supposed to stay with us that summer. My husband's nephew, 23, tall, golden-skinned, always with a mischievous grin. Just a kid, right? But one glance from him felt like a match struck in a gas-filled room. I told myself it was harmless. I was just tired, unappreciated. My husband was always working late, and when he was home, it was like I was invisible. But one evening, he looked at me in a way no one had in years. And suddenly, I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a woman starving, and someone had finally noticed. I'm 32 years old, married for nearly 8 years, and if you were to look at my life from the outside, you'd probably call me lucky. My husband, Mark, is a good man, dependable, kind, stable. He kisses me on the cheek every morning before work, brings home flowers on anniversaries, and never forgets to ask how my day was. But that's the thing, he asks, and then barely listens. His eyes drift back to the screen, or his phone buzzes, and the moment passes like so many others. Polite, predictable, hollow. We used to have passion. In our 20s, before the mortgages and work stress and the quiet resentment that builds when someone forgets who you really are. Now, sex feels like a chore we both check off a list once or twice a month. Dutiful, rushed, silent. Sometimes I lie there wondering if he even notices I don't finish. It's not that he's done anything wrong. He just stopped seeing me. Not as a partner, but as a woman. A living, breathing, wanting woman. I tried to talk about it once. I sat across from him on the couch, heart pounding, and said, "I feel like we're roommates more than lovers." He frowned, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, "Things have just been busy lately." Then he turned the volume back up on the TV. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've buried my needs. Learned to pour my longing into silent spaces. Journals, long showers, whispered fantasies that never see the light. I go to work, cook dinner, fold laundry, and keep a smile painted on for the world. But inside, there's a scream that never stops echoing. A craving not just for touch, but for recognition. For someone to see me. To want me so badly it hurts. When Mark's sister asked if her son could stay with us for the summer while he did an internship in the city, I didn't think twice. "Of course," I said. "We have the guest room." It was innocent, practical, just family. I didn't know that letting him into our home would be like unlocking a cage. I didn't realize I was trapped inside. His name is Evan. 23, fresh out of college, tall and broad with that effortless, sun-warmed confidence that only youth can carry. He's Mark's nephew, technically, and I'd only met him once before, years ago, when he was still in high school. Back then, he was just a lanky teenager who barely made eye contact. But when he stepped through our door that June afternoon, suitcase in one hand and a crooked grin on his lips, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Not just seen, noticed. His eyes lingered on me for a second too long, flicking from my mouth to my chest before he quickly looked away, clearing his throat. Maybe he thought I didn't notice, but I did. And something inside me fluttered, something I immediately tried to smother. I was just being silly, reading into nothing. It had been a while since someone looked at me like that, that's all. But it didn't stop. The first week, it was small things, casual, even innocent. He'd come into the kitchen in the morning shirtless, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the lines of his abs catching the early sun like a sculpture. He'd lean over the counter, watching me slice fruit, and say, "Smells amazing in here." And when I'd glance up, he'd already be looking at me, too intently for someone who's supposed to think of me as family. Once, I dropped a glass on the floor. He crouched beside me to help clean it, and our hands touched. His fingers lingered on mine, just a beat too long. My breath hitched. I told myself it was nothing, but when I stood, I could feel the heat rise in my cheeks, and I swear he smirked. Another evening, Mark had to work late, again. Evan and I ended up watching a movie together. I sat at the far end of the couch, clutching a pillow to my lap, trying to ignore how close his leg was to mine. Halfway through, I laughed at something on screen, and he turned toward me, eyes crinkling. "You've got a great laugh," he said. "Why don't I hear it more often?" I looked at him, really looked, and there it was, something heavy in his gaze, unapologetic, curious. My stomach twisted in that dangerous, thrilling way. "I guess I forget to use it," I replied, softly. He tilted his head, studying me. "That's a shame." After that night, things shifted. There was an electricity between us that neither of us dared name, but we both felt it. Charged silences, brushed shoulders in the hallway, the way his eyes followed me when I thought Mark wasn't looking. One afternoon, I walked into the laundry room to find him shirtless again, lifting a basket onto the counter. His muscles rippled, the thin sheen of sweat making his skin glow. He turned as I stepped in, and for a second, we just stared at each other. "I didn't hear you," he said, voice a little hoarse. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." He looked at me, really looked. "You look really nice today." I was in leggings and a loose t-shirt, hair in a bun. I laughed nervously. "This? I've been cleaning." He shrugged. Still, I felt my heart pounding, stupidly, like I was 16 again. I muttered something about needing to check on dinner and rushed out, but the heat stayed with me the rest of the day. And then, there were the late-night kitchen runs. Evan had a habit of coming down for snacks around midnight. Once, I caught him there, shirtless again, eating cereal out of the box. I was in a thin tank top and shorts. Too thin, I realized belatedly, from the way his eyes widened. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, trying to act casual. "Yeah. You either?" I shook my head. "Insomnia's a bitch." We stood there, quiet, the only sound the hum of the fridge and his slow crunching. Then he said, "I don't get how someone like you can be up alone at night." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He swallowed. "You just seem like someone who should have more attention. You're..." He stopped, then smirked. "Never mind." "No," I said, heart hammering. "Say it." Looked at me, long and low, and said, "You're beautiful, okay? You walk around this house like you don't even know it. And I don't get how someone like Mark just lets you disappear." I couldn't breathe for a second. That was the moment it stopped being playful. That was the moment I felt the rope snap inside me, the one I'd been clinging to, telling myself I could resist. Because deep down, I didn't want to. It happened on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Mark had gone to visit his mother, a last-minute trip that would have bored me to tears if I'd gone along. I told him I had errands to catch up on, groceries, laundry, bills, and he didn't question it. He never did. Evan was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, flipping through a book I'd left out. The sound of rain tapping the windows made everything feel hushed, intimate. I moved around the house aimlessly, restless, too aware of him just one room away. I was folding laundry when he appeared in the doorway, barefoot, hands in his pockets, hair slightly messy. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." I didn't look up. I couldn't. "I've been thinking about what I said the other night," he continued. My hands stilled on a towel. "I meant it," he added. "All of it." I turned to him. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because you're," I faltered, struggling to finish the sentence. "You're younger, your family, you're dangerous." But he took a step closer, then another, until he was just inches from me, his presence wrapping around me like a heat I hadn't felt in years. "You think I don't see the way you look at me," he said, voice low. "You think I don't feel it too." My heart pounded, so hard I thought he could hear it. I tried to back away, but my heel bumped the wall, trapping me. His hand came up slowly, deliberately, brushing a damp strand of hair from my cheek. I should have stopped him. I should have pushed him away, but I didn't. Instead, I leaned into his touch like a woman starved. He kissed me, not like a boy with a crush, but like a man who knew exactly what he wanted. His lips were soft, urgent, searching. I gasped, and he took that as permission to go deeper. My hands, traitorous things, gripped his shoulders, pulling him closer. Every nerve in my body came alive. It wasn't just the kiss. It was being wanted, being devoured, being seen. Mark hadn't kissed me like that in years. Not with heat. Not with hunger. When we broke apart, I was breathless, dizzy, shaking. "We can't," I whispered. But even as I said it, I didn't move. "I know," Evan said, pressing his forehead to mine. "But I don't care." Neither did I. The rest unraveled like a fever dream, his hands on my waist, sliding under my shirt, trailing goosebumps across my skin. My back hitting the laundry room wall, his mouth traveling down my neck, making me gasp. I clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world I didn't recognize anymore. Clothes disappeared in a blur, my fingers tugging at his shirt, his lips tracing every inch of exposed skin with reverence. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't careless. Every movement felt like a question. "Do you want this? Do you want me?" And my body answered before my mouth could. When he lifted me onto the counter and fit his body between my thighs, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. Not from shame, from release, from years of being touched but never felt. Years of lying beneath someone who loved me, but never craved me. Evan looked at me then. Really looked. "Are you okay?" I nodded, biting my lip, overwhelmed by the way he held my gaze, the way he waited. Patient, tender, trembling slightly himself. When it finally happened, it wasn't just sex. It was an awakening. My skin felt too tight, my heart too full. I moaned into his shoulder, clutching him like a lifeline. The way he touched me, like I was sacred, like every part of me deserved to be worshipped, made me want to weep. And when I shattered in his arms, it wasn't just an orgasm. It was a breaking. Of silence. Of numbness. Of every lie I'd told myself about being satisfied. Afterward, we stayed there for a long time, our breathing the only sound in the room. He cradled me against his chest, brushing his fingers through my hair, murmuring things I didn't dare believe. "I've wanted you since the day I walked in." "I think you saved me," I whispered without thinking. He held me tighter. But the moment eventually shattered. Reality crept in like a cold wind through a cracked door. I pulled away, reaching for my clothes with trembling hands. This was a mistake. "Do you really believe that?" he asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The guilt was already bubbling, thick and sour. But so was something else, something deeper, not regret, not yet. As I redressed, I caught my reflection in the dryer's glass door. My hair was tousled, lips swollen, eyes wide and confused. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked alive. Evan touched my hand gently. You don't have to go back to feeling invisible. I gave a small, broken laugh. It's not that simple. Maybe not, he said. But I think you already know this wasn't the end, not for us. And that scared me more than anything, because he was right. The moment Mark walked through the door later that evening, I felt like a fraud. He kissed me on the cheek as usual, dropped his keys into the bowl by the door, and asked how my day had been. I told him it was quiet, that I'd gotten laundry done and groceries sorted. He nodded, distracted, already reaching for the remote, already fading away again. He had no idea another man had been inside me just hours before. No idea I had stood in the shower after, trembling, scrubbing at my skin until it turned red, hoping, foolishly, that guilt could be rinsed off with hot water and soap. And yet, I didn't feel dirty. Not in the way I thought I should. I felt full. As if something hollow inside me had been cracked open, flooded with warmth I'd forgotten existed. It terrified me more than any shame ever could. That night, Mark reached for me in bed. It was rare. Maybe some subconscious signal that he sensed a distance between us. Or maybe it was just timing. Either way, I let him. I turned toward him, closed my eyes, and let him move over me like a man fulfilling a promise. He kissed me out of habit. He touched me with kindness, but no urgency, no hunger. I didn't make a sound. I faked it, quietly. I bit my lip and forced myself to remember the way Evan looked at me when he undressed me, the way he made my name sound like worship. And it hit me, painfully, that I'd spent so long pretending with Mark. I didn't even realize how mechanical it had become. When he finished, he rolled over with a satisfied sigh. Missed this, he mumbled, already drifting. I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide, heart thudding. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. What kind of woman was I becoming? The next morning, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, not because I regretted what I'd done, but because I didn't. At least not the way I was supposed to. That scared me. I thought I'd feel wrecked, torn, but instead, I felt awake. Evan avoided me for a day, maybe sensing I needed space. Or maybe he was dealing with his own storm of consequences. But when I passed him in the hallway, his eyes caught mine, and held them for just a beat longer than necessary. No words. Just heat. Understanding. A tether. At breakfast, Mark sat across from me reading emails, sipping his coffee. I watched his fingers tap the screen, watched his eyes blink at the glow. We didn't talk. We barely even ate. I thought of Evans, hands on my hips, the way he looked at me like I was fire and he wanted to burn. I should have been satisfied with safe, with loyal, with good. But I wasn't, because being loved isn't the same as being wanted. And Mark hadn't wanted me, really wanted me in years. He loved the idea of me, the function of me, the wife who kept things together, who didn't complain, who stayed in line. And for so long, I had played that part without question. Now, I didn't know who I was anymore. The guilt clung to me in strange moments, passing reflections, the sound of Mark humming in the shower, the scent of his cologne when he hugged me goodbye. But it was dull, numb, like an echo I'd already grown used to hearing. The more damning feeling was the thrill, the want that hadn't gone away. If anything, it was louder now. My body remembered Evan in vivid flashes. His mouth, his voice, the way he touched me like he'd been waiting for years. And I realized something horrifyingly honest. If he kissed me again, I wouldn't stop him. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of pretending. Of washing dishes beside Mark while wondering if Evan could still taste me on his lips. Of folding laundry with trembling hands, remembering how those same hands had clawed at his back while I came apart. Evan didn't push. He stayed silent, respectful. But he looked at me the same way every time we crossed paths, like he was waiting, like he already knew what choice I would make. And the worst part? So did I. I tried to pour more of myself into my marriage. Planned a date night. I wore perfume I knew Mark used to love. I even initiated sex again, hoping I could recreate something real from the fading blueprints of what we used to have. But it felt like making love to a ghost. His hands were gentle, but detached. His kisses kind, but obligatory. I cried in the bathroom afterward, the sound of the fan muffling the sobs. I wasn't angry at Mark. He hadn't wronged me. He hadn't hurt me. He just stopped seeing me a long time ago. One night, after he went to bed early with a headache, I wandered into the kitchen to find Evan there, shirtless, drinking water in the dark. Moonlight lit his skin in silver streaks. His eyes met mine like he'd been waiting for me all along. I didn't speak. I just walked over, leaned in, and let my lips graze his shoulder. A whisper of a kiss. A silent confession. He turned, cupped my face and said, "You don't belong here anymore, do you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, I didn't go back to bed. I don't know if I'll leave Mark. I don't know if I'll stay in this shadow life, orbiting 2 different versions of myself. One dying, one desperately learning how to breathe. Again. But I know I won't forget what it feels like to be wanted. To be seen not as someone's wife, but as a woman with hunger, fire, and need. I told myself once that I'd never be that woman. The one who betrays. The one who crosses the linked one, but here I am, and maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just awake.